Good morning and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Today we'll be discussing picking a therapist. What should I look for in a therapist? Joining me today is Stephanie Jones and Josephine Ed. And let me pronounce this name correctly. I'm just going to say Josephine. Thank you, ladies. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
We're in the afternoon back here, so good afternoon.
Good
Good day.
afternoon, Josephine. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today to discuss picking a therapist and what we should look for in a therapist. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you to share with our audience where in the world you are and what it is that you do and why you show up to volunteer with Black Mental Health Matters. I'm going to start with Josephine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sonia. My name is Josephine Ebhoomhan. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a mental health counselor and also a career guidance counselor. So volunteering for Black Mental Health Matters is just a way of me contributing my own quota back here in Nigeria for people to, understand what mental health is and also, help Black people to be up in the space as regards mental health. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Josephine. And Stephanie, tell us where you are, what you do, and what brought you to Black Mental Health Matters.
Sure. So happy to be here. Blessings to both of you. Happy to dive into this topic. So I am Stephanie Jones, Lala Calandra. It's all interchangeable. I am a marriage and family therapist and a mindfulness life coach. And I have a coaching business called Sailor Mindset, where I encourage people to slow down, take a pause, process their feelings so you can move on. Um, why I volunteer with Black Mental Health Matters is because the name says it. Black Mental Health Matters, right? Where there are a lot of people in our community who have stigmatized therapy and they don't want to go, but we need it the most. And so if they see familiar faces, if they hear these topics that are really good, I believe it helps. And we've seen from the comments and interactions that people are becoming more open to working on their mental wellness. So that's why I keep up the good fight, because it's super important that our people are okay.
Awesome. Well, I am Sonia and I'm in Barbados. And like Steph, Black Mental Health matters to me a lot. It's helping to destigmatize mental health and bring people to that place where they are concerned and get the help they need for the mental and spiritual health challenges, because my work is primarily with the soul, with what's going on with you spiritually, helping people to return to that place of wholeness. And with that, we're going to jump right in and discuss what we should look for in a therapist. I'm going to start with you, Steph.
Mhm.
Can you give us a few pointers as to what to look for in a therapist?
Yeah, I forgot to say where I am. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, up north. That's the northern part of America. It's a little nippy and chilly here, so we're just making it work. I want to acknowledge, right? I want to take a moment to acknowledge that finding a therapist can be a nerve-wracking process. It can be scary. It can be frustrating. It can be all of that, right? I feel like if you acknowledge that, then we kind of know what we're going to walk into. I would really, really encourage people who are trying to find a therapist to make sure that it's your time for therapy. While everyone, I believe, should be going to therapy, sometimes we're just not ready. Our mind's not ready. Our physical body's not ready. Our circumstances, our finances, our environments are not ready. So if you have identified that you are ready to get a therapist, to start seeking therapy, it's really important that you determine if you want, if you're a Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're a part of any spiritual faith, if you want a therapist who shares your same faith. For me, when I found my therapist, that was one of the main things that I wanted to look for, because there's certain things you can talk about, you can make sure that they understand, You have to decide if you want a male or a female. These are very important things. Do you feel comfortable? If you've had any type of sexual trauma, you might, and you're a woman, you might not go with the male therapist. You might go with a woman because you might feel comfortable. There are just those certain like exterior things that you want to look at. Do they share the same beliefs as you? Because there are many therapists who do. Do you want them to be your same gender or not? Do you want them to be white or black? You want them to be of your race? I mean, these are just external things that you have to decide, because therapy is about you, the client. And so if you're not comfortable in the session, trust me, as a therapist, you're not hurting our feelings by saying, I want to go to another therapist. You're actually helping us, because the therapeutic relationship should be one where everyone feels comfortable. And if for any reason you don't feel comfortable with someone, you want to make sure that you're going to a therapist where you feel comfortable so you can be open. The more comfortable you feel, the more open you'll be. So my pointers, and I know we'll get into more of it, look at the external things that you want, right? Who do you want to be in a session with? These intimate spaces, these very open and vulnerable places with. Who do you want to be in here with? You can pick and choose so that you feel the most comfortable, so you'll open up the most and get the most help.
Thank you, Stephanie. What about you, Josephine? Give us a brief overview as to what to look for in a therapist.
Okay, I'm so happy that we're having this kind of conversation, because these days we're having people who are coming to therapy, and when you're asking them what their goals are, they have no idea. I don't know if it's happening over there, but it's actually happening over here, and I want to believe it's because it's their first time, coming for therapy, or maybe hearing about therapy. But I'm going to put this in the Nigeria context. So if Nigerians want to come for therapy, I believe the first thing they should check, like what Stephanie said, is their availability. Some people are not available for this session. I had a client once who had to stop coming for session because each time we book an appointment, she's always having something to do. And it was really frustrating the session for me and for her too. So availability, also how much we know how counseling can be cost effective sometimes. So it's preferable you check your pocket to know if you can afford therapy. So you don't start one or two sessions and then maybe you're supposed to have like 6 sessions and then just stop in one or two because you can't afford it anymore, right? And for those people who are not on insurance, some people, their insurance can cover up therapy depending on the type they're going for. But for those who do not, I would suggest maybe there are other organizations offering free counseling sessions. So I believe maybe they can go into something like that to help them now. But for now, this is all I can say, because Stephanie has already said more, and I do agree with what she said.
Awesome. Thank you, Josephine. Stephanie, earlier you said that if a person has suffered from sexual trauma, they may not want to go to a therapist who triggers that trauma. What I want to get is clarity on the male female therapist, because very often we think that males are the only ones who commit sexual crimes against other people. But within recent times, we would have heard of male on male sexual abuse and female on male sexual abuse. I just want a little clarity on that, in terms of if I've been traumatized by a female, I might feel more affinity to a male. But there can be that transference going on where I might become overly attracted to my male therapist and see them as a savior of type, and then you have some other issues going on. Can you address that in terms of
That's a,
selecting?
yeah, that's such a good point, Sonia. I mean, choosing a therapist, it has to be such an intentional thing, right? It can't just be something we just wake up and do. There has to be a lot of thought process put into it, because if you're triggered in a session, if something happens, right? Because the intimate space of a therapeutic place it's easy to be attracted to your therapist. It's easy to feel feelings because they've helped you out of certain things, or they walked you out of certain things, or assisted you with your goals, right? So, and what I was mentioning is like a woman who experienced sexual trauma from a man might have to reconsider having a male therapist, or they might feel comfortable with the male therapist because that might be a healing space for them, where you have the trauma from a man, and maybe a male therapist will help to shift your mindset, saying all men aren't unsafe. So that could work too. And we have to decide, okay, if it's going to be a male or female, and what that's going to do to us, right? Do we know ourselves? It takes a lot of introspection too. That if I'm easily attracted to people, if I have still an open heart, so wide open, and I just gonna have my emotions all over the place, am I being safe in this situation? And I'll say this, and then I'll land. When I first got my master's in marriage and family therapy, right? The first thing that my professor said to the whole class, we went through a cohort: do not sleep with the clients. We were like, what are you talking about? We would never do that. But when you get in a session, it's intimate. You pass a certain barrier and a layer. So you have to be intentional. If I'm gonna have a male, am I gonna be attracted to this male? And if I'm a male, if I have a female, am I going to be attracted because I'm in an intimate space? I'm in an unhealed space. So I love that. It's just intentionality. We have to really think about who we want as a therapist, because so many doors and avenues are opened up.
And that raises the point of ethics in the practice of any kind of where you're meeting with clients, ethics. I'm going to ask Josephine to handle this question. How does ethics come in when we're choosing a therapist?
Okay, thank you, Sonia. Uh, During my own class, as a master's student too, we had this lecturer who was trying to tell us about ethics, confidentiality, code of ethics as a counselor and things like that. Um, I had issues with the fact that as counselors, there's sometimes you have trouble with a particular client trying to understand their situation and give recommendation. And I was in that dilemma of, should I discuss this with a fellow counselor and things like that? Or how will my client get to see me? Will he or she be comfortable, you know, hearing or even imagining that her counselor is talking to another fellow counselor or someone else about their issue? So I had issues with that. But then, sorry about that noise. But then, when it comes to ethics, we've been told time without number to keep things really confidential. And for me, I decided to say, okay, if I'm having issues, right, and I do not want to disclose what this client has said to me, maybe I'll just get to use Google, or I get to reframe the question asking some random person what they think about a certain issue. Through that way, I get to have leverage, because I'm not going to lie, we don't know all the answers all the time. So for ethics, yes, a client has to even go, like, have an understanding of the expectation as regards professionalism from their therapies, right? Gone are those days when maybe clients come with no clue of what to expect in sessions, or have no clue of what to expect concerning the counselor, and then everything is just the session is just done like that. No, gone are those days. This time around, clients have to be aware that there's a professionalism ability of a counselor, and it should be expected from the client. Also, we shouldn't breach confidentiality, maybe by talking to someone, or even talking to the client's parents or loved ones, right? But there's also another issue of when it has to do with harm, or when a client comes to tell you about some, maybe quote unquote, try to kill someone or harm someone, oh, I'm so sorry, we have to break confidentiality when it gets to that one, because we are trying to help another person here, and also help the client not to go to jail. So definitely we can bridge confidentiality when it gets to that.
In listening to you, this question came to mind. I'm looking for a therapist, and there are lots of therapists out there, and they all have different specialties. I might not be aware of what my real issue is. Should I interview my potential therapist? I'm hiring a therapist. Should I interview my potential therapist? Either one of you can answer, or both of you can answer and give you the two different perspectives. Who wants to go
Okay.
first?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quick. That's a great question, right? I like when therapists give like a consultation before you start a session or anything. You just go for a consultation. It's greatly. It's sometimes therapists have it for free, or sometimes you have it greatly reduced from what your normal session would be. I think you should interview your therapist, your potential therapist, because you want to make sure it's the right fit. Just like when you're looking for a new job, you kind of do your research, you look up the company, you see what's going on, you might do some investigation, because you're going to be in this session with this therapist for a while or for a short amount of time, however long. It's going to get intimate, it's going to get deep, you might cry, it might get emotional. You want to make sure that it's the right fit. Now, how do you interview your therapist? I think it's good from my perspective to just ask certain questions. When you mention your goals, Josephine mentioned goals. When you recognize what your goals are for therapy, and you mention your goals, and you just talk with your therapist about how they would help you achieve those goals, that's a conversation that it's okay to have. And should what they're saying not align with maybe the way you want it, or when you're doing your research, something is, just not settling in your spirit, or just not sounding right, it's perfectly fine to find someone else. But then on the flip side, I'll say this really quick. You want to make sure that you're not too picky, because then it becomes an excuse not to be in therapy, right? So we're mindful of all avenues. Oh no, this wasn't a good fit. No, I don't want this. Then we start therapist hopping, and we never really get the help we need. So it's kind of that delicate balance.
Thank you, Stephanie. I like what you've said, that you can become indecisive if you have too many options. Yeah, you can become indecisive. I remember going to a doctor once. It was recommended, specialist. And when I walked into his office, I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel that, and I left without getting the treatment that I needed. And that was for a physical ailment. I just left because I didn't feel his spirit. There was no connection. And what I want from anyone who I'm dealing with, whether it is a medical doctor or a psychologist, psychiatrist, anyone that I'm dealing with, I want to feel that sense of connection, that we are going to be one in any treatment plan that is being given to me, so that I can feel comfortable, I can feel safe in discussing things with you. I can be as vulnerable as I want to be without feeling embarrassed. And that's for any issue that I'm having, whether it is medical or psychological. And on the question of ethics, I heard what you said, Josephine, about confidentiality, but are there any other areas where ethics can be breached other than confidentiality?
One I can also remember, I think it has to do with judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'm going to give a scenario. So I've worked with different sets of people. the ones who are aware. And I believe this aware people are people who have, trained themselves over time, maybe get a good education, know what to expect from people. And then I've also worked with people who are new into therapy, do not know what to expect from people, just go in like that. So I had this client who had a session before, and it had to do with what she said about this other counselor was that the counselor started out well, and then moments later it had to do with assault. So moments later, this counselor was friends with the person that assaulted her. And then I don't know how the session was going. And then she felt the counselor was judging her, because I think, yes, she brought up the topic that, oh, I can see you're now friends with the person who assaulted me and things like that. And then, you know, the counselor said, I wasn't listening. So what she said she felt judged. Maybe the counselor said something like, oh, you were the one that threw yourself at him. I've spoken to him and he doesn't seem that way. Now, this is something a counselor shouldn't do, right? And it's very, very tricky, to be in such as a counselor, to be in such space. So um ethically, counselors are not supposed to be judgmental. But another thing again is, are people aware when they are being judged in a session? Are people aware when a therapist is breaching contracts and not setting boundaries or crossing over to the client's boundary? People are really not aware about these things, and I think that's the reason why we're having this live session right now, that people have to really understand the kind of person they are, and if they are to do research about the type of therapies they need, they have to be really, 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 really intentional. Really, really be intentional. And they, I believe with the right education, you would know what you want. And when someone is crossing the line, you get to opt out.
Okay, thank you. I have another question coming out of what you just said, and that has to do with, I am looking for therapy, and my therapist is judgmental. It is a very tricky thing to realize, and my question is this, and it comes from many are called, but few are chosen. And I think very often persons choose professions with the idea that this is how much I'm going to make from this at the end of the year. We go to school and we study for careers based on the potential income that we can generate from that. Where I stand as a spiritual practitioner is, for me, it is not about the money. It is about getting that client to a place of wholeness. It is about offering a compassionate ear. It is about emptying myself when the client comes to me, so that I can journey with that client until they achieve their goals. But what I'm hearing, and this is just coming up for me, that should therapists be trained in the field of emotional intelligence, so that when they show up for a client, they're showing up from a place of truly understanding themselves, not the client, but understanding yourself and where you're at. Because there are times when someone walks into your office and you have to say, let me refer you to someone else. Because I think that a good therapist is also highly intuitive and knows when to say, let me refer you to Stephanie, because Stephanie can cover this area far better than I can. Rather than saying, well, this client represents another $5,000 this month or based on what you're charging. But being truly there for the client, I think that if I'm choosing a therapist, my therapist has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not client sensitive, but client oriented, about me as a person, about really helping me, because each client that we help to return to wholeness means that we're helping humanity return to that place of wholeness. I'm going to ask Stephanie to add to that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm loving this conversation. It just, as many times as you talk about it or hear about it, it's just new things that come up all the time. I just want to reverse back a little bit to what Josephine was saying about judgments and ethics and things like that. I know that for me, I live in a small town. I grew up in a small town. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone's in everyone's business, right? So if you're in a small town, city, village, place, location, you will bump into conflicts of interest all the time. So I feel like that kind of catapults me into, if you're in a court of law and you're a lawyer or you're a judge and you bump up on a case and you know someone, you were supposed to recluse yourself, remove yourself from the case. Why? Because your judgments automatically, if you're a juror, you automatically say, hey, I have a bias towards this. I have to remove myself. Therapists, we have to get to that point too. And I don't know if it's just a level of humility that's needed, or we don't want to admit that we maybe don't have what a client needs, but we do have to get to that place where we say, hey, I will not serve this client the best, so I need to take a step back. I need to refer it to Sonia, to Josephine, because what I have, my capacity, I'm noticing some things. Maybe, maybe to a client and a therapist, your attitudes don't join. You might bump heads in that way. You continue the session. Who's that helping? No one. You know what I mean? And then it's a severe break, and then it's a nasty break, and the client just doesn't show up. You get a bunch of no call, no shows. That's not helping anyone. It's better when you recognize, as we're the professional. And even though it might be two adults, I see a lot of children too, but if I'm dealing with an adult, I'm the professional. So the onus is on me, the therapist, to say, hey, I can tell that maybe this client, therapist relationship isn't flowing the way that we want to. Maybe it might be best to seek another therapist. And I would never leave someone out there. You say, hey, this is the person that I would refer. Maybe they would be able to help you a little more. And then you give that person a choice and an option. I think we do have to be very emotionally intelligent, and we have to be super client center focused. That's my favorite modality. Super client center focused, because it gives unconditional positive regard. Even if the client reminds me of maybe my mom who just annoyed me before I got in the session, or my brother who's really frustrating me, or my brother who I want to help, even if these clients are reminding me of my family members, my friends, right? I have to have unconditional positive regard, that I'm thinking of you in the best light. If I am unable to do that, if the therapist is watching and you're unable to do that, if a client you're watching and you feel like your therapist is not vibing with you in that way, it's okay to separate. It is not helpful in a session to do that. So it is our responsibility to either say, hey, I'm not able to do that, let me refer out. Or if you're in a session, you say, hey, this we're kind of button heads. It's being more tense. Let's try to maybe seek some other options. It is, the onus falls on us. It's our responsibility, which makes it hard. It's even kind of hard to say it. I'm like, man, because we're human too, right? Therapists are human as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're not robots, but it's our responsibility to identify it, see it, and then make the proper corrections.
I'm going to throw this question out to both of you. I'm looking for a therapist, and I walk in and I see all these papers on the walls. You know, some people have all their walls decorated with every degree that they have. And in some cases, some degrees are not accredited. Are these questions that a client should ask? Should a client investigate your credentials to verify that you are indeed qualified to handle their cases. And I say this because I know there are a lot of people who take YouTube courses, and by that I mean listen to influencers on YouTube, and then you say, "Oh, I'm going to do this as well." Especially persons who do life coaching, and yeah, and some doulas as well. They don't have the credentials from a reputable college or university, but they are working in the field, and in some cases, making a bad name for those who are legit, those who have spent their years studying human behavior and all the other necessary things that have to go with it. What are your feelings and thoughts on credentials? Having your credentials and your client asking you to verify or wanting to verify that it is legit. Either one of you can go first.
Okay, let me say something about this because I've had an experience. So I when I did a postgraduate diploma first in guidance and counseling, and I was told if I could join association back here in Nigeria, I have to have a master degree. But an organization took me in as a volunteer and trained me based on my own postgraduate diploma, and while I was trying to sort out my master degree. So I had this client who came in and asked me if I had the right qualification. So she wanted to know what my qualifications were. I'm not gonna lie, I felt insulted. I felt down. Um, I managed to tell her something. I can't really remember what I told her, but I managed to tell her something, and she was like, "Oh, okay, I can work with this." Oh, okay. So let's start. And then the session ended well and everything was good. But I had to go back to sit down and I was like, wow, was she supposed to ask me that? Is she really qualified? So fast forward to my master class and I had to ask my lecturer. This was what I experienced during volunteering. And he was like, yes, she's right. She was supposed to ask. And it was then I realized that I keep saying this. There are people who are really self aware. There are people who are really aware about what they want when coming to therapy. And if they are not getting it, they are out. So therapists have to really step up, get that degree. I'm not sure about MOOCs, Abby, MOCS courses. I'm not sure about that. But if you're going to have the real credentials about getting into association, getting the licensing and things like that, you really need to go to an accredited school. And I wanted to do short courses too. It's easier. I know the lady who has been telling me she also wants to become a counselor, but she doesn't have time to go through a year course, right? Professional masters now. Just me, I went for academic masters. So professional masters, which is a year back here in Nigeria, she said she doesn't have that luxury of time. She just wants 3 months. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about that, but I know that I've been in a situation where someone is really asking me for my qualification and wanting to know where I stand. So she gets to know, and it was really embarrassing for me, but she could work with my postgraduate diploma, right? So adding my master's now has kind of uplifted me and made me, say, yes, I'm confident. This is what I do. This is my field and things like that. So clients should ask. I found out though the hard way. Clients should ask about the credentials of the counselor. After her, I've never had any client ask me, but if a client wants to ask me now, I'm very confident to tell them about my degrees and my associations and also what I do as regards mental health. I'm confident now. But yes, clients should ask. But it's the ones that are really aware that usually ask. The ones who are new into therapy, or the ones who don't even really know what they want, they don't have a goal, they don't really ask such questions. And this is also a way of telling therapists to really step up their game so they don't get to be pushed around. So that's what I can say.
Thank you, Josephine. Well answered. Well answered. Credentials, I think, are important for some professions, especially when you're dealing with the human mind, the human psyche, the human body. Credentials, for me, are important. Um, I'm going to ask this question of Stephanie also, because Stephanie is also a minister, and ministers do a lot of pastoral care as well. And I know that there are some churches that offer counseling, but the persons involved in giving that counseling sometimes don't have any educational background in counseling, none at all. Just biblical text, and here's your therapy. We're just going to throw the Bible at you, and that's your therapy. What are your thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think credentials are so important. I love everything that you said, Josephine, because we have to start putting mental health in the same category that we do physicians, dentists, anyone who's working on any part of our bodies, orthodontists, cardiac doctor. If we're making sure that they are credentialed, and no, we're not. Well, I know that I've never went up to my, primary care doctor like, let me see your credentials. But I do my, you make sure that they're actually licensed, that they have a license to practice. The same thing should be, for your mental health provider. Make sure that they're licensed and credentialed. Make sure that what they're saying that they can offer, they actually can offer. Because as you were saying, Sonia, there's a lot of people who are perpetrating in this field. They've went to YouTube University. That's the only place that they've graduated from. And they've watched videos, and they have not really done their due diligence in making sure that they know everything. And I want to say this too. This is not a field that you play around with. If you're not called to this field, exit quickly. But the same thing goes for ministry. If you're not called to ministry, please exit quickly, because you don't have the grace for it. If you're called to this field, you've been given the grace for it. You've been given the strength and the stamina for it. It's not an easy field. It's tough to hear the traumas of people. Oh my gosh, you pick up what they're feeling. It's tough. If you're not really prepared for it, or if you have glamorized the therapy world and, I just want to get in here because it's going to make me look good, get out quickly. You're in danger. You're in danger of hurting yourself and others, right? So that's what I would say. Same thing with ministry. You're called to ministry. You're called to being a therapist. You're called to being in the helping field. If you don't hear that call, and you have called yourself and you have come yourself, it's dangerous. Again, for the client, it's dangerous for you. It's dangerous for everyone you encounter, for every word you utter, for everything you say, because you don't really have the things to back it up. Maybe you don't have the experience. Maybe you haven't sat through a grueling master's program and done your internship. We've done this work so that we can help you. So you want to make sure that the therapist that you're going to, if you're looking for a therapist, it's okay to ask them about their credentials, because you want to make sure this person is working with my mind. Again, you would not go to a physician if they have not gone through their schooling, through their 8 years of medical school. You would not go to them. Don't go to a therapist who has not done their due diligence and gotten all this stuff. And even now we're taking it to church, or in a spiritual sense. Those who offer pastoral counseling, right? And I'm trying to work on this in my neck of the woods, where we are making sure just to give them at least a brief synopsis of some of the major mental health issues or concerns that they could see in the congregation, in the church, or wherever you're worshiping, right? Because to offer pastoral care without being prepared to receive the onslaught of emotions and things that can happen, that's dangerous too. If you're going to offer counseling, at least be knowledgeable of the mental health things. If you're well versed in spiritual things and you know what to look out for, and then you tap into the emotions and you're unprepared, it's damaging for everyone. It's damaging for everyone. Pastors and lay ministers and bishops, apostles, get licensed people, get those who have done the work in the mental health field in your places of worship, so that you guys can combine together and help cut the congregation out, help each other out. It's not safe to just be out here offering counseling without a true understanding and knowledge of it. I think back in the day, you would go to your pastor for any emotional thing. You would go for marriage counseling. We don't have to do that anymore. We have people right in these places of worship who have the credentials. Use them, because we went through these programs for you to make sure that we're able to help you. So use us because we have the backing for it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the three of us here work with people who have experienced trauma, going through trauma. And as you said earlier, Stephanie, we've taken a lot. We've taken a lot. And what I want the audience to take away is that therapists also work with therapists. I go for therapy. I have at least 3 different types of therapists in my life. Yeah, because you're working with so many different types of issues. So I find it very helpful to have someone's people that I can talk to. And because of the nature of what I do as a spiritual therapist, usually that is another spiritual therapist that I go to, that I'll sit with for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and have them work with me on the things that are challenging me. Um, I'm going to ask this question because I believe that even as counselors and therapists, that you too have your core of therapists that you work with, that you go to when things are not feeling so good for you. And what I want to find out from you, what makes you select the therapist that you're working with? What is unique? What does that therapist bring to you that you can share so that the audience knows, well, look, when I hire a therapist, this is the quality, or sorry, these are the qualities that this therapist is bringing to the table for me. I'm going to start with you, Steph.
Yeah. Oh, yep. I'll jump in. So, currently I have a therapist. He's actually a Nigerian man. I know, right? I'm like, come on, Nigeria. Love it. Love it. Magic to the world. I love it. So, when I was looking for my therapist, I've only ever had male therapists because I need to hear things in a certain way. And I'm a woman, I'm all woman. But for me, what I needed to go to therapy for, I needed to hear it from a male perspective. Could I have gotten it from a woman? I believe yes, but in my experience of what I needed, I know that I wanted a male therapist and have only had male therapists because that's what worked for me. My therapist is a Christian because that is the faith that I am in. I wanted him to be able to speak biblical terms to me. I wanted him to be able to pray if he wanted to. I wanted him to be able to mention the name of God or Yah. I wanted him to be able to say that and me not look at him strange, like, so I wanted him to be able to do that. And he's really gentle with me. So, like I mentioned, I'm from Boston, and we have a very, sometimes our persona and demeanor can be kind of tough. It's cold up here. We just put our head down and we just keep walking. Sometimes, you know what I mean. So I needed him to speak to me in a certain way that I could hear it and understand it. And he's wonderful. But that's the credentials that I wanted. I know that I wanted a man. I know that I wanted a black man. He could be from anywhere in the diaspora. It didn't matter if he was from Texas or over across the seas. It didn't matter. I knew that I wanted a black man. I know that I wanted someone who could speak to me about my faith. And I know that I wanted someone who had been in the field for a while and for what I needed. It was more like relationship stuff and self-worth and all that. That's something that he was specializing in. So I specifically knew what I wanted. And it was a good fit. We were able to have some consultations and see, and it was a really good fit. I'm picky, especially with therapy, because you want to make sure that you're getting the right care. I'm giving out care to people. I have to be picky. Clients, be picky. Those who want to be picky. I might not like this. I might like that. And nowadays you can go on all these websites that you can put in filters. I want this, this,
Yeah.
this, this. Shop and choose and specialize and identify exactly what you want. So that was my process, and it worked out very well for me.
Awesome, 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 awesome. What about you, Josephine? Tell us a bit about your therapist if you have a therapist.
Okay. I had one therapist um that I went to. Then I have a friend who is also a counselor that I go to from time to time. So the other one I had to pay, obviously, to go to. Um, I wanted someone elderly because I'm in my late 20s, and I believe the person has more experience than I have. Um, Also, the issue I was going for was more of emotions control and all. So I went to a female. I've never had a male therapist though. So I went to a female who specialized in emotion. I think it's called the emotional doctor. Yes, emotional doctor. So, and she was good with what she does. And I was able to also learn from her how to teach my own clients in regulating their own emotions too. So yes, as a therapist, I also go for therapy from experience, people who are more experienced than I am. And I like it that way because I get to tap from their own knowledge and also get to help my own self heal because we are humans too. So we have our own challenges that we are going through. So then apart from that, I have a friend who is a counselor who we just sit down and just randomly about things, and then you see us calming down, the calming effect. It's always good to have someone that you can talk to other than family. So yes, those are the two people, and those are my criteria in choosing a therapist.
Thank you, Josephine. Thank you, Stephanie. I trust that that has been very enlightening to see that therapists also have therapists, that we also go for therapy because we take in a lot. And if you understand the human mind, something stay in it and you turn it over and you turn it over and you turn it over. And if you understand the human mind, you know that the human mind is not just mind. It is beyond mind, it's also the subconscious. So the conscious mind is the subconscious mind and the superconscious mind. And we hold a lot of things in our subconscious mind. So yes, you need someone to help you filter out some of that stuff and remind you of who you are. And now that we've come to cover those areas, the other area that I would like to cover, and that would be intuition. I think intuition is important when dealing with clients. I think it is also important when selecting a therapist. I think we covered briefly, touched on this briefly. You say, there are things you have to refer, someone walks into your office and you just have that sense, like, I'm not handling you today. I'm referring you to Stephanie because Stephanie is Christian and she will be able to handle that. And I want to ask this question because sometimes we bring our biases into that healing space. We bring our biases. And I'm asking this question from a religious perspective in terms of intuition. Because the world is made up of so many different types of people of different races, different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds. What would you do in a situation where Muslim walks into your office and you're a diehard Christian? Your intuition is telling you don't deal with this person. What would you do in a situation like that, especially if it might be an emergency where the person is at that point of breaking? How would you handle that from a place of your intuition?
I'll
I know
jump
it's a
in.
tough question.
It is tough. These questions have been amazing, and this conversation has been like just enlightening. I think when we take the steps to become therapists, right? You go through the training, you get your credentials, you're making sure that you've gone through a program, an accredited program. When you become a professional, there are certain things that you have to put aside, right? And right when you were talking, Sonia, I started thinking, about the LGBTQ plus community. That I have clients who are in that community, right? Whether I support it, whether I believe in it, whether it's a part of my religious practice, it doesn't matter to me. And me seeing a client doesn't mean I support what you do, right? And now we're not talking about any crimes or anything like that. I mean your lifestyle. If I see you as a client, it doesn't mean that I support how you live. It doesn't mean that I support the God you serve, who you choose to marry. It doesn't mean that. It means that I'm seeing you at your human level. I recognize that you need help, you need assistance, and I'm a professional, and I'm going to say, I need to help you in this moment. And sometimes our intuition is so entangled with our emotions that we really have to separate them. That if a Muslim walked into my office, I am not Muslim. If a Muslim walked into my office and they needed help, they were going through a crisis, I, in my professional state, would have to say, I am going to help you. Whether you serve Allah and I'm talking about God, it doesn't matter in this moment because I'm seeing a human who needs help and assistance, and I have to put my own stuff aside and I have to say, you need help. That's how I would handle that situation. In any situation like that, with a white person, I'm not white. And there's certain things, especially in America, that have happened between white and black people. Can I put my own feelings aside and say, you are a human who needs help right now? Can I do that as a professional? That's what I said I would do. So I have to do that. And it's not easy, right? It's easier to say it than to do it. But that's how I go into every session. I'm seeing you at your human level. Can I help the human in you, the brain that needs help right now, despite whatever else you have going on? Can I do that? If yes, then it doesn't matter. You can walk into my office and I'll help you.
What about you, Josephine?
Yes.
No, let's go.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for saying what you just said as regards Muslim. Where I did my postgraduate diploma was in the north, and there are core Muslims over there. We even had to learn counseling in Islam. So when we were learning that, um, there was a big conflict in what I practice as their own religion too. But along the line, when I started having clients who were Muslims, I had an understanding of where they came from, and the multiculturalism counseling we were taught back then came into play. And because of my understanding from counseling in Islam too, so it wasn't difficult handling such clients for me. And like what Stephanie said, we regard clients as human first before we start saying whether they are white or black or red or green, or if they're um, trans or straight or any of all those things. We first of all look at the fact that you're human. And like what Stephanie said, the fact that we are in the session together doesn't affect the kind of person I am also. So it doesn't also mean that I believe into what you're doing. I'm just here, or you're just here for your concern to be treated, and that's what we're going to do agreeably and make sure we're able to achieve your goals, right? So yes, intuition. I've been in a situation where I had to refer a client because I couldn't handle what she was bringing at the initial stage. I think it had to do with, I'm talking towards intuition right now. She was um diagnosed of postpartum depression, and when the session started, I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot to take in. It's been long I've been with a woman who had given birth, so I wasn't relating too well with her, and she needed she needed she needed a lot of help. and I wasn't qualified to do that. So I had to just go meet my manager to say, this is what's happening. I'm not sure I can handle a case. I believe she needs referral or something like that. And then I told her about the referral and she agreed, and the problem was solved. Right. So yes, um, if a if a client comes and realizes that based on intuition they don't feel they can be with this therapist, they can opt and leave. They can change their therapist. It's not a do or die affair, right? And we are saying all this so that clients can be aware that they have choices to make. The fact that yes, we're all coming as professionals and we are saying that with one voice that Black community have to respect their mental health, it doesn't mean all counselors or therapists are the same. It doesn't mean so. You have the right to choose. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. We are almost on top of the hour. And in as much as I would like to go on and talk about transparency of the therapist and all the other wonderful things that a therapist should possess, I'm going to honor our time here, and I'm going to ask you both to give just a brief conclusion of what should I look for in a therapist when I'm selecting a therapist. And I'm going to start with Josephine.
Okay, thank you. Um, Personally, I'm going to be telling people who are watching right now that you have the right to choose. You have the right to make your research, right? And then before you start doing your research, make sure you have your own goals and a bit understanding of yourself, right? And this way it makes the session go smoothly. You have the right to ask your therapist about her credentials or his credentials. You have the right to ask. Do not be afraid, right? This is someone you're coming for a session to understand yourself, your emotions and your feelings, and having a closed mind and a closed mouth wouldn't help with that. So you have the right to ask questions. If you do not feel comfortable, you can opt out. Also ask about the payment plan. Yes, I can't believe I'm going to forget about that. Ask about the payment plan. So yes, most organizations help you with your budget and say, okay, this is what I feel after consultation. This is what I feel would be able to cover up for the money you have and things like that. Some counseling organization offer they have different offers. There's an amount, certain amount of money for 4 sessions or 5 sessions or 3 months or even group therapy. So make your research and ask questions. You're free to ask your therapist any question. So that's what I can say. Thank you.
And thank you for bringing in that payment plan, because payment is very important.
Yes.
Josephine, over to you.
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, I echo what Josephine said. You have to make sure that before you even start the search, that you search inside yourself to make sure you're ready for this process. You don't want to waste anyone's time. You don't want to waste your time or your future therapist's time. Make sure that you are at the right spot for therapy. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. Make sure, right, that you are able to afford everything. And be picky. I think that's what I'll say. Be very picky. Be picky, but not too picky. But be picky about your therapist. If you would not go to an unlicensed physician, a dentist, orthopedist, anyone else, if you would not go to these people and they don't have credentials, treat therapy in the same way. Put it up to the same standard. It's not below, it's right with it, because it all covers the health of the human body. Do your due diligence, do your research, make sure that they have their credentials, and make sure that they're right fit for you, right? See exactly specifically what you want in a therapist. And we applaud you for having the courage to even think about getting a therapist, right? Because you've gotten over a big hurdle. It can be daunting and scary, but kudos to you for even wanting to embark on this journey. It's a healing journey, it's a wellness journey. Kudos to you. Good job that you want to be here. So be picky about it. You've gotten over this hurdle. You've made excuses. No, yes, no, yes. If you're here, be picky so that you're in a good session with those who can help you and a therapist just right for you.
Okay, we're not quite finished. There's a question that was posed, and I want to put it out there. So this is the question from Tatanisia Dinish. How do you do this when a therapist is by the state and not private practice? And that question would have come in a few minutes ago.
Is that about credentials, maybe, or?
I think it's about, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was so engrossed in the conversation that I hadn't been monitoring the comments. And I apologize to that, viewers. Um, but I believe that this is to do with credentials based on the question. Because if the state appoints a therapist to you, then you really don't have a whole lot of say in the matter, especially if you're a minor. You really don't have a whole lot of say in the matter. And either one of you can answer Tantanicia's question, because I think it's a very important question. How do you select a therapist when that therapist has been appointed by the state? I think that is in essence what she's asking.
I guess I would ask, in what spaces or places would a therapist be assigned to you? You know what I mean? Like, what would it be, from the court? Would it be, and I see she's on LinkedIn, so if she's not able to kind of give more clarity, I don't mind following up with her on there, just to see
I
what
would,
she meant. Yeah.
I would love
But
that. I would love
yeah,
that.
I think that'd be best, because you I'll just say it like this, just to try to answer what we think it is. You can get credentials from anyone if they're assigned to you, if they're mandated to you. You can ask for credentials from any therapist. Even if they're assigned to you, they should have credentials. If that's what you're asking, they should have credentials no matter what, and you should feel comfortable asking them for them. And not in like, who are you, but like, oh, what's your background, like, what's your background, like, oh, what made you get into this field, and their credentials will come out in that. It's not like you have a pen and paper and you're like investigating, because that is very uncomfortable. As Josephine was like, what? So hey, who are you? Not what are you licensing, but hey, what's your background, or what's your specialty? You can start asking those questions. Feel free to ask your therapist questions too. I want to say that. Ask some questions too, just so you can get to know what they are, and what they're licensed in, and what are their credentials.
Thank you so much, Josephine. I like this discussion today because choosing a therapist is not the same as going to a store and choosing a handbag. This is someone who's going to help you to transform your life from where it is to where you want it to be. And therefore, you have to find the right fit. You have to find a therapist.
Can I add something? Sorry.
Sure, sure, go ahead.
Okay. I understand kind of what she was saying. If, let's say, for an example, the government hospital, when you go to meet a doctor, you know, I think her context here is for private practice because you're paying so much and huge. Maybe you can just go straight to their face and ask them, "Oh, I would like to see your credentials," and things like that. But for government or state, I guess if you're asking, maybe the counselor can just say, oh, "Okay, I'm sure you don't need the session anymore. You can step aside. Whether we have session or not, I get paid." Things like that. So in this case, like what Stephanie said, you can ask for credential based through conversation. And I'm going to give an example. It doesn't have to do with therapy. My phone got spoiled, so I had to go to a phone repairer, and he during the process, because I'm a therapist, I know a bit of psychology, so I get to ask questions and I get to talk. So you don't spoil my phone no more,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then I was like, wow, I see how diligent you are in doing this. Did you go to any school, to learn this? And he was like, yes, see my certificate. And I saw something hung on the wall and I was like, wow, it said yes. And then he went further to tell me how he has been in this role for 5 years. And after that, his master, that's the person he worked under, gave him freedom. That's what we call it over here in Nigeria, to, go and explore. He came back to work for his master for extra 1 year without pay. And then when he was done, his father was able to loan him money for him to open shop. And that's how he started. Right. And then he also told me that he had a degree, and he showed me his certificate. Now, all this was happening based on conversation, and my face wasn't all, are you sure you're the best person that can handle this phone? Or should I change you? What do you have? I'm not sure you can handle this phone based on the way you're doing. No, I didn't have such attitude. It was just conversation, right? And he was at ease, obviously, and then he explained himself. So you can do that for both state and private practice, right? So that the journey towards in the session will be smooth. I hope I've been able to answer her question.
I trust that you have. With both perspectives, I think we're not going to go with either right or wrong, but know that the perspectives of both of you matters. Um, yeah, I would say that the perspectives matter. And I would like to close our session out by saying thank you to the audience, and thank you, Josephine. Thank you, Stephanie. Um, just knowing that choosing a therapist is not anyone will do. You have to find the right fit. You have to find a safe place, a place where you can be as vulnerable as you want to be, and know that whatever you say in your therapist's office stays in your therapist's office, and that you heal from the moment. The healing process starts from the moment that you walk into that office, because it is where you want to be, and you've made a conscious decision to be there. And I trust that if there are therapists online listening, that we've been able to help you to in processing what it is you're bringing to the table for your clients. Because at the end of the day, it is about the client. It's about healing humanity, one mind at a time. And with that, I'm going to wish you all a blessed new year. And I look forward to working with you in 2024. Have a wonderful afternoon, ladies. Thank you, audience, for
Bye.
joining us. This has been Black Mental Health Matters. Thank you all. Until.